You. Thanks, Pradeep. Thank Ashwini. Thanks, KK, for joining in. I don't know whether it is the right one, but this is the 49th Gravitas Win Show. So I'm glad.
Very good. Good
Yeah.
to know, Joseph. Yeah.
One more to go for off century.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. All of you have been part of this from day one. So thank you so much for this. And we'll see, next week we may not have, but the week after that we will have. So thank you so much for being with us all this while. Okay, so today the book review is, the book name is Hacking Capitalism. This is probably, this is by Chris Nova. She works in GitHub now. And maybe she's not a well-known author, but what attracted for me was applying cybersecurity skills for career growth. That was the thing that was attracting. And as you would know, all of you are in technical skills, you will know when you join two concepts, say for example, if I were to talk in technical terms, if you were to join two tables, so to speak, employee and company and jobs, and so on and so forth. When you join tables, the data becomes a lot more valuable. So for me, what was interesting is she's applying cybersecurity skills for career growth. So it's a very different lens. I've never seen such a concept. So I said, okay, I will start reading. And the first initial probably like 30 pages or so, we're all very cynical about the capitalist system and so on and so forth. And apparently she has a reason for it. She's kind of from a oppressed, the author is from the US. Apparently she's from some kind of an oppressed thing. But somehow me sitting in India and reading it, I didn't find that to be a lot more convincing, but I quickly skipped some of these pages, almost all of those pages. But later part, I found it extremely valuable, very practical. And I was like, yeah, this is the right thing. And some of these things I have applied. So if you are planning to read this particular book, and which I would say it's a very, very quick read. It is not 300, 500 pages. It's a very quick read. Maybe you can read, if you have a Kindle subscription and a Prime, I think it is part of either Kindle Prime or part of the other Kindle subscription. And then you will get it for free. So you can read it. And I find it to be extremely valuable. What I'm going to do is, I'm not going to go through each of the chapters as the author has written. I'm going to take it up and combine it, or rather, I'm going to give it up in 5 different categories. One is business as a system. And she has explained it really well in that particular sense. Look at business as a system. You need to understand business as a system. Second, what kind of cybersecurity skills that you're talking about. And even if you don't know anything about cybersecurity, even if you don't know anything about hacking, you will still be able to understand it. Then break and build. Then influence and sustainability. Some of these concepts that she's talking about, maybe some of these things you might have heard outside, but what I found is the way she has articulated, the way she has combined multiple things, I found it to be very exciting. Okay. So take business as a system. The first thing that she's talking about is that the capitalist system, obviously we are all working in capitalist system. None of us are from Russia or any of those kinds of socialistic countries. But even then, even in continental Europe, the companies operate in a capitalist system. What she says, and this is also very true, is that capitalist systems are ruthless, but they are very, very predictable. They work in a certain manner. Everybody works for profit, and so on and so forth. There's a very predictable pattern for capitalistic system. The point that she makes is, as much as it is ruthless, in the sense that it's a rat race and so on and so forth, in that particular sense, it's a ruthless system, it is very predictable. When it is predictable, which is what from a cyber security point of view and a hacker point of view, when it is predictable, you can exploit it. You can understand the system and the subsystem, the components, and then say, oh, you know what? If this is how the thing works, then you can go and say, oh, you know what? This is how I need to approach it. So you can study it, you can observe it, and you can find ways to inject yourself into that particular path, and so on and so forth. That in itself is I would say, if you are starting in your career or if you are early in your career, I think that's a fantastic insight, I would say, because then you can study. And then she goes on to explain how you can study, how you can observe, and so on and so forth. So that's the first thing. So when you study a system and a subsystem and how they interact among themselves, you can predict how it's all going to work. And you can already say, okay, if I push here, what will pop out on the other side? You can already make it because it is predictable. The other point that she says is, which is also I have seen to be very true, whether it is in life or in our career, is that you will not find one big, large, wide open door for you. It's very, very rare, probably once in a lifetime that happens. But often you will find small open doors, very, very small things that are open. And then you peep in and you'll find another small door. You peep in, another small door. You peep in, another small door. And suddenly you are in a very, very different place, which you would not have imagined if you would be waiting for a bigger break to come for you. So that's another thing that she talks about. It is always the small doors. And then she goes on to say how you can observe, how you can take advantage of those small doors. But you have to be mindful that nobody is going to give you a big break as one. Maybe once you will have it in your life, if at all you are lucky. But otherwise, you are going to find only the small doors. And why she says it's a small doors is generally these will all be unattractive. Because obviously, if everybody can notice those small doors, everybody will be able to go in. But you will find those small doors in your life, and you'll have to grab those small doors and then keep going through those small doors to come to the break that you want. The other point that she says is all business revolves around capital. This I also found, I found this particular insight much, much later in my life, is that all business activities revolve around capital, right? So that's what capitalist system is. Everything revolves around capital. So if you want to grow in your career, if you want to go to the top, the topmost that you can go, you have to understand capital. How capital is created, how capital is produced, what brings in capital, how the capital is spent, and so on and so forth. And you should learn to communicate in that capital language. And this I find it to be, I did that mistake, and now I see others making the mistake, my teammates make the mistake, is that the technical people will talk in the technical language. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what the product does. What they care is what the product does for them. So it's the same thing. You go and present something. Oh, I did this. And then most often this happens with my team members, and I keep telling them. They will try to justify their salary. They'll try to say, oh, you know what? I worked over the weekend. I worked on this particular presentation for 40 hours. None of those things matters. What matters is whether the presentation meets whatever that value that it is supposed to create, right? So, which means what the Chris Nova says is, one, you need to understand the capital. You need to keep yourself as close as possible to wherever that capital is being produced. And then again, that's a lot of mistake that we people do. We do not want to involve in sales, marketing, any of those activities at all, except probably KK. None of us want to get involved in that at all. The trouble is, that's where the capital is. Those are the people who are closer to capital. So rightly, she says, only when you get closer to capital, you can get closer to the top management and the top tier of your company. And lastly, from a business as a system, she says you need to learn to speak their language. Again, whoever that be, it could be your customers, it could be your sales team, it could be the management, it could be the elite circle of the industry, it could be any of those kinds of stuff. So you need to try to learn to speak their language, what they will understand. And this, I find that a lot of time, as well as techie guys will go and say chat GPT and all of those kinds of. Again, none of these top guys care about what chat GPT is. What they only care is, how will chat GPT help my company? How will chat GPT bring me more sales? Will it reduce my marketing efforts? So on and so forth. What it can do for me is all that they are bothered about. That is why Chris also says the capitalist system is ruthless, but it's also predictable, because everybody, once you learn this particular concept, right? Everybody only bothers about what something can do for me. Yeah, you can, it is predictable, and then you can go and exploit that because it is predictable, right? So those are the 5 or 6 points that she talks about business as a system. I want to take a pause. Do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? Do you have anything to add?
I just want to add one thing. So when we develop anything, right, we always see that when we come up with any features, right, we always see what benefits customers get. We look into that perspective and develop.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I see you're making the same point.
Yeah. So Pradeep, because of the agile development methodology which has come in, that concept of we should only develop what the customer wants have kind of come down even to the last developer point of view. But still, I see a lot of gap. Okay.
Okay.
So Satya, what she says as exploit is taking advantage. Because it is predictable, you can say, like, say, for example, I'm a developer, I'm starting in the lower ranks of the company, or let's say, for example, I'm an indie maker, but I'm starting out. Now, the predictable thing is the top management, elite circle, the customers, they only care about what something will do for them. It's predictable. Nobody is bothered. Nobody's going to come in and say, oh, you know what, Joseph, you worked so hard, so we will pay you. Nobody's bothered about it. Which means so that's the predictable part of it. Then you can work on it. You can say, okay, this is how I will go about doing that. And you can short circuit many of those things. So instead of, say, for example, there is a presentation to the customer, instead of me thinking, oh, I'll work 40 hours and my boss will appreciate, when I know that the whole thing is going to be appreciated, my whole effort is going to be appreciated only if it meets what the customer wants, then I'll first find out what the customer wants. Many a times I will go through some of the presentations which does not meet the agenda at all. They will all talk about so many different things. They would have spent time on the font, color, all of those kinds of stuff, but it doesn't address the pain point or the agenda point that is there. So if it is predictable, you'll go and meet that particular point. So that once you hear it, it becomes so obvious. But as I was reading through, I was thinking, oh my God, I have made that particular mistake, and my team members are making that particular mistake. So that's the point. If you know how it is predictable, you can go and work on it. Yes, Satya, I'll talk about it in a little later. Okay, so that's the first thing. If you don't have any other questions, I'll go further. Ravdeep, thanks for joining. Hopefully, I'm not saying anything wrong about cybersecurity hacking. You are the master. Okay, so now coming to, so this is first thing is you need to understand the system. Then she talks about what are the cyber security skills that you need to bring to table for this particular part. She puts in some of these skills. These are, and then she goes in detail about these kinds of skills. And even though it is hacking skills and cybersecurity skills, anybody can practice them. First thing is research. Like, say, for example, first, let me talk about hacking, the cybersecurity hacking kind of a thing. There is a ethical hacking and there is also non-ethical hacking. Ethical hacking is, say, for example, I am working in a company. I want to, and I could be a freelancer also, but say, for example, I'm working within a company, then there are systems that are going to be put in the public. Say, for example, my company's website. I want to be sure that that website is secure and no other hacker can deface that particular system. So I will do an ethical hacking. I'll try to attack that particular system using different means to be sure that it is safe and secure. So what she says is, first thing is research. When she says research, when she's talking about research, so I'll first go about what are the skills. The research. Second, you observe. Second is you observe. Third, you take notes. Next one is pay attention to details. Spot small gaps. Do unattractive work. Speak capital words. I already talked about speaking capital words. I'll go about it. It'll keep coming in. But first thing is research. Research is find out what your company is doing. How money is coming into your system. How money is spent in your system. Because again, capitalist system works or revolves around capital, which means you need to understand how your company is making money, how what is the production system of your company, what are the subsystems of your company, where are you from, how distant are you from that company making money. So let's say, for example, my company is making money by producing some application, web application. So that's how my company is making money. Then where am I with respect to that particular thing? Am I talking to the customers? Am I talking to the customers to understand what the inputs are? Am I talking to the customers to understand how they are using the system? So where am I in that particular hierarchy? Am I a developer who is coding, who has absolutely no idea about the customer? So somebody else is filtering it through. So then I'm on the lowest rank. I can have no influence at all about how the product is going to be used, how the product is getting used. And I cannot really show my value because I'm a commodity. But if I'm talking to the customer in one way or the other, it could be a lead, I'm getting into a pre-sales call, I'm getting into sales calls, and so on and so forth, then I will have a lot more influence. And I'm a sales guy, or I'm a customer, say for example, a product owner, or I'm a CTO, or I'm a VP engineering, or any of those kinds of stuff, then I have a lot more power, a lot more influence. So first thing is research. Research how your company is making money. And then there are a few other research also she talks about. Say, for example, how are conflict handled in your company? There are many ways conflicts will be handled. And then every company will have conflicts. How are conflicts handled? Is it transparent? Or is it all hush-hush? Or is it all dog-eat-dog system? Observe it. Make notes. Because that is what you are going to use it for. That's how you're going to take advantage, and that's how you're going to learn it from. So first thing is research. Second is observe. Again, as I said, observe the system, how things are happening, who is making decisions. Not always, what I have found in my career is not always the CEO is making all the decision. A lot of times CEOs abstracted away. Probably for you, like, let's say for example, I'm a business analyst, I'm a technical developer or something. For you, probably the decision making could be your business unit head, but many a times the business unit head also may not be making much decision. All that he or she is doing is Excel sheet, scheduling, and that's all, nothing else. All the decision is done by somebody else. So you need to observe and say, okay, who is making decisions? Who are the decision makers? And you want to be as close as possible to the decision makers. Take notes. Every single thing, take notes. And she goes on to, obviously she's not talking about obsidians and so on and so forth, but she is talking about a lot of how you have to take notes, what kind of notes that you have to take. As I gave an example, conflicts. Observe what kind of conflicts are coming in, how conflicts are resolved, are they open, and so on and so forth. All of those things, take notes, because that's how you will know who are the decision makers, who are the influences, who are the people who have real power in the company. And then you can adjust accordingly to grow in that particular career. And one other thing that she says is, again, once you read it, it becomes normal. Each system has an intent and a purpose. Intent is what it is supposed to do, but purpose is how it is actually done. And there could be a lot of gap between these two things. And this also I found, pre-sales is supposed to bring in sales to the company. They are supposed to go out and prepare to prepare all the collaterals for getting into sales. But many a times they may not really do it. The people in the pre-sales, they might have been brought from a business analyst background. So they really don't know how to do the research and bring all of the information. So it is possible. So the intent of the pre-sales is that, but they may not really do it. So the purpose may not really be met. So these are the gaps. So you need to identify those kinds of gaps and make notes, take notes of all of that. Right? So that's what she says. You have to pay attention to detail. And this is another thing that I see missing in many people's life. Whenever I read documents, you'll have all the spelling mistakes. It'll not be grammatically correct. They will talk about scope as one thing. Subsequently, it'll be talking about something else because they got distracted. Or they would have Googled, they would have copy pasted it, not really making it relevant to what the scope of the document is. Those are paying details. Those are the things that is going to make you different. So that's what she says as ready to do unattractive work. These are all unattractive work. This is initially, these are not the things that is going to put you on the spot. But even subsequently, let's say, for example, you have to send a document to the CEO. You are in pre-sales. You are at a lower level. You are not even heading pre-sales. You are at a lower level. You have to send a document to the CEO. It has spelling mistakes. It has some of the other contextual mistakes. Then next time he or she is not going to give that work to you. But one time you do that, you made a mark. They are going to observe it. And this has happened to me multiple times over my career, even when I was young, even when I was junior, is that somebody, again, these are all small doors, right? It as she says, you're not going to get that all the time. So these small doors, you pick it up, you enter, you do the unattractive work, you make a mark, and then you move back. You have made the mark. People will remember you. And then it'll open up bigger doors. I have said this multiple times. The bigger break that came to me first, it happened like this. I was in a project. I was in a company called Covances at that point in time. I was put in a project. I didn't do, I was very new. And for some reason, somebody, he was not even a project lead. He kicked me out of the project. But thankfully I was given a computer. I'm talking at least about 98 or so. That time, sending emails programmatically was the hardest problem. And then I somehow cracked it. It was an unattractive work. Nobody asked me to do that. I did that. And I shared that with the project manager. I mean, one of the project manager, highly unattractive, small open door. I did my work, came back, didn't bother about it. But subsequently, there was a bigger work that came in and it was allocated to me. And that was the door that changed everything. And then subsequently, he referred me to so many different engagements. So the point is, lot of the work that you want to do, it'll all be small, open door, and it'll be unattractive. But if you do that well, because you're taken notes, you have observed, you know what is needed, and you're paying attention to the details and so on and so forth. Then what's going to happen is those work that you do, that unattractive work that you have done for the small doors, that is going to lead to a bigger door. And again, like, I mean, once she says it, it becomes duh. I mean, yeah, it's true, but then you don't realize it in the beginning, right? So these are the points that she's talking about, and then finally get to the capital as much as possible, as close as possible, and use capital words, the communication to the elite group, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's applying cybersecurity skills. Do you have any questions? Let me take a pause. Do you have any questions? Anything? Or any observations? Okay. All of you are here?
Yes, Joseph. First of all, hi from my side. It's been long since we connected.
Yeah.
So I've observed this thing in my company and in like a lot of other places, right? Where people are very few people, but they are willing to do whatever is required, very unattractive kind of a job, right? But they are like very, very enthusiastic towards just getting that thing done, right? And they know internally that this will open doors for them, right? People will start trusting them that this person has done this work, and when you do this work you will get more, right? And subsequently, slowly and gradually, you will get bigger projects and impactful work, right? When people starts trusting you, they believe in you, and this has happened like a lot of times for me.
Yeah, Devang, the thing is, at least when I was growing up, I didn't know that it is going to happen. So it was all unattractive work, but I didn't know it's going to open up doors. So that is what Chris makes a point. The capitalist system is predictable. So you are also confirming to that particular thing. So what she says is it is unattractive work. But when you do the unattractive work, but on the path of moving forward towards the capital, and you understand this particular thing, that they only bothered about what they want and whether they will meet their needs, not really about all the effort that you have done, then you can start hacking, and then you can start exploiting, or you can take advantage of that particular thing, right? So that's what I mean, she keeps on saying. So that's the point that she's making. Okay, thanks, Devang. So okay,
also, one more thing I have observed, Joseph, in many organizations, and which is very true, right? You said engineers are only obsessed about their own work, right? How they are doing things, and they are not aware about who the actual customer is, and what is their context, how they use your product, and so on and so forth, right? Once an engineer knows that, that gives him a superpower, right? He can generate a lot more energy in his own team, right? And
absolutely
can move mountains to basically do only impactful work, which is creating impact in customers' life, rather than like focusing on himself and doing high quality engineering, right? He can focus much more on the things which can make more revenue for the company and can generate more impact in customers' life.
Absolutely, that's exactly the point that she says. When you can do more work which will generate revenue for the company, the top elite is going to respect you. And I'll come into that. Like, I mean, that's the point that she talks about in influencing, but very true. Okay, so the next section is about break and build. The third section is break and build. So breaking and building, those are the two skills that you need to develop, purely again from a hacking point of view as well, is that the economy and companies pass through this break and build cycles. And even in IT, you would have seen this particular cycle happening all over every time. As I have said, I started in about 90s or so. I had to write 150 lines of code to bring in a hello world dialogue. Just bringing in a hello world dialogue, I had to write 150 lines of code. Just few years later, Visual Basic came in, just one sentence, one line of code, and it'll come up. And then over the period, I have seen this kind of a thing happening all over again. So the point that she makes is all economy, and because all companies are within economy, that's the first point she makes, capitalist systems and everything, all economy, and because all companies are within economy, all companies go through this break and build cycle. So you need to understand it. Again, she talks about how predictable it is and what you should do for utilizing that predictability. So she says, okay, all companies are going through this build and break cycle, which means you will have to break and use what you have broken, or anything has broken. The economy might be broken, or other things, the company might be broken because of other reasons as well. Use those parts to build something valuable for the company and for you. So that's what she is talking about. So whenever there is a chaos, you can influence a lot more. Whenever there is a chaos, there is a lot of space for you to influence. Because whenever there is a chaos, again, it's an unattractive work. Whenever there's a chaos, people are going to go back. They don't want to take in charge. They don't want to do things. They want to be in their comfortable zone. But that is when you go and embed yourself in that particular situation, somebody is going to be in charge, right? So that in charge person, if you can embed yourself into that, and if you can do things along with that particular person, that is when you are able to build your influence. So that's what she is talking about. You have to position yourself in the path of productivity whenever there is a chaos, whenever there is disorder, and all of those kinds of stuff. So you need to learn to break things also. So if there is something, and you would hear this all the time, oh, this is how it is done in here. I have found the easiest way to make a mark is break that particular process, question that particular process. As I told you, maybe earlier I have shared, when I was a junior project manager, when I went to a leadership coaching of the company, I observed that it would take me 14 years to become a VP. So I asked, why should that be 14 years? We are not in manufacturing unit. We are not in agricultural unit. Why should it take 14 years? If it's a knowledge economy, if I have the knowledge, if I'm able to do what it takes to do, why can't it be 7 years? Put me in a fast track, and if it doesn't work, I'm ready to be kicked out. They said, no, it is not possible. So you always question, you always try to break in one way or the other. Of course, I quit later, and then I did become whatever that I want to be. But the point is, try to break. Don't accept, oh, this is how things are going to be. So that's the hacker model. Hacker is always looking at, okay, if this is the system, where can I inject myself and break things? And can I get hold of certain things? Can I control something? Some asset can I control? That's the hacker mentality. So what she says is that's the mentality that you need to develop. And so that's a breaking point of it. But then you don't stop at breaking, right? So if you stop at breaking, you're only reducing your influence. But then you break, but you also build something new, build something valuable. Because if you understand the production system, if you understand where capital is working, if you understand this is how the top leadership is thinking, then what you can do is you can go and say, hey, this is how the process works. It shouldn't be broken. It should be changed. And then because the situations have changed, and they will listen to you. I'll give you an example. Most of the IT companies today are all in India, are all services company. Now, I know KK, Devang are all working for a product company, and Pradeep also to some extent. But most of the companies are all services company. Now, in India, the services company have worked on labor arbitrage. Our costs have been slow. In the US and UK, the costs are much higher, and they can't find people. We can find a lot more people here. So it has worked on that particular model. But now it is changing. But even today, a lot of companies work on labor arbitrage. But can you go in and say, you know what, this is not going to work? Let's say, for example, there is also low code, no code that's coming in. There are a lot of Eastern European guys who are a lot more cheaper than us. And then there are freelance guys in Thailand who do things much cheaper than any IT services company in India can do. Then can you code this and say, hey, you know what? Your pre-sales is not going to work. Your sales process is not going to work because of these challenges. So that's breaking. You are injecting yourself into that breaking of the system, but you don't stop there. You say, okay, you know what? We can do things using a low code, no code model. We can do things in a different way. So you're also starting to build. So you are not only going and giving a bad news, so to speak, that things are broken or things are not going to work, but you are also going and building things. You are establishing your kind of influence, your kind of value. And this takes a lot of time. This can happen only if you give yourself to details. Because a lot of people, what they will do, they will find a problem for every solution. They will only say, sir, this won't work, that won't work. And they will stop there. So they will break, but they will not build. So when they are not building, the top guys are not interested. The top guys are interested only if you can generate value. So if you are only giving negative answer, negative input, they don't really care. So they want to know, how else, okay, we understand there's a challenge, but what can I do? So that's what they want to understand. So if you build, that is what is going to happen, right? So let us say, for example, on the building, what she says is, first make it, do something, and make it to work. So first instance, do not worry about, oh, is it efficient? Can it scale? Don't bother. Just make it, something, make it. Then make it work. And then make it work well. So those are the 3 steps she says. And if you really think about it, and if you really go into the details, that makes sense, because a lot of us are inhibited by, will it really work? Will I be able to make it work? And so on and so forth, right? So instead, what she says is, first you make it, you build something. And, as I was saying, this is the 48th or the 49th session that I have. But on the first session, if I would have thought, oh my God, will I be able to do it? I don't think I would be here. So first you make it, the first session, second session, and then make it work well, make it efficient, see how you can promote, then make it work well. That's when you're talking about efficiency and everything. Okay. So you're breaking, but then you are also doing the building part also to make it valuable for you and for others as well. The other 2 points that she makes really good in break and build is that realize you can't do everything on your own. As soon as you realize you cannot do everything on your own, then you will start to collaborate and cooperate. And she makes a very, very subtle difference between collaboration and cooperation. Collaboration is some common goal you are achieving. That's collaboration. So say, for example, this sales lead has to be 1. Or this marketing campaign has to be, at the top of the things, or whatsoever it is. That's a common goal. Everybody is working towards that. Whereas cooperation is, yes, there is a common goal, but you also have a goal. So cooperation is to achieve your goal as part of a common goal. So you're also saying, okay, you know what? I want to learn this. I want to make my mark clear. I want to handle an independent responsibility in this particular thing, whatever that it could be. It could be any of those kinds of things. But then you put forth those goals either explicitly or implicitly, and then you work towards that particular goal. So when you're building, you are cooperating with others. You understand you can only work along with others, but then you are also back of your mind. You know that this is what I want to get from this particular work. And you are very, very clear about it. So she talks about collaboration and cooperation. And then finally she says, and which is also I found it to be very true, which again I understood much later in life, is that you need to have a clear understanding of your worth and your compensation. So whatever you are earning, if you divide by 2000, that's your per hour salary, per hour revenue that you make. Anything that you are doing, you should ask yourself, is it worth that money? Otherwise, either don't do it or delegate to somebody else or find another tool to do it. Very simple. So you need to know what your compensation is. Then what you can do is every 5 years, you can make it to double. you can work, you can acquire skills or whatsoever to say, okay, you know what, I want to double it. Lot of times, I mean, the indie makers might have this, in consultant might have this kind of a knowledge. Most often employees do not have this kind of an understanding. They don't, because for them, at least in India, there is no clear concept about this is what per hour worth. I am worth this much per hour. That is not there because we don't have a clear-cut understanding of 10-hour work or 9-hour work, because the work is pouring in and we continue to work through the weekend, 10 hours, 12 hours a day, through the night, and so on and so forth. So we really don't understand what our compensation is worth. So then we are at the mercy of the HR department or others, my manager, to really give me some kind of a raise. And I can't really say, okay, you know what, in 5 years, I want to double it, or 7 years, I want to double it, and so on and so forth. So that's another point that she talks about. Okay. So on break and build, is there any questions, any comments, any questions? Okay. So the next one she talks about is influencing. Again, because this is gravitas, I was very much interested, and I was also interesting to read that. She says, generally in corporate, in companies, influencing is thought of as a bad word. We think of it as a manipulation. But if you think about it, all of us are influencing. As parents, we influence our kids. Even in office, the CEOs are influencing people, their employees. Politicians are influencing. So everywhere, either we are influencing or we are getting influenced. So it is happening, whether you like it or not, it is happening. So again, the point that she says is capitalism is predictable. If it is predictable, you can influence it. You can inject yourself, break the system, build it the way that you want it. And that's what the point that she keeps on making. Capitalism is predictable. If it is predictable, you can decompose into multiple systems, and then you can break that particular process and rebuild the way that you want if you understand how it works. So she says you need to learn to influence. And influence comes first. Authority and title will come later. The first thing is you need to be able to influence. You should be able to influence your manager, that you are capable of doing it, so that the manager will give you that particular work. Or the independence that you want. I will do it alone and I can do it. So you'll have to influence that. What I've also found is, even when you grow, say for example, you take a business unit head or a team lead, any of those kinds of a position as well, even before an idea can be executed, you need to influence, you need to advocate for that idea to exist. So let's say, for example, you want to run a campaign. You have a clear-cut idea. You are kind of like, you know it will work, but you need to still convince somebody to give you that money, budget, or authority to go and run that particular campaign. And I'm sure Devang, being in a product company, he will know, before he can go and say, okay, you know what, I have talked to a customer, this product feature will sell. He'll have to advocate for that particular product. He'll have to convince somebody else to say, okay, this particular feature will work. Believe me. So that advocacy, that influencing is anyway there on a daily basis. So you need to learn to influence. And again, in influencing, she asks, before you talk, before you put forth your point, ask 2 questions. What are you talking about? What is that you are talking about? Why does it matter to the person that I'm talking to? Those are the 2 questions. Again, if you remember, we talked about knowing capital and talking the capital words. It is getting repeated here, is that break your message into 2 questions. What is that I'm talking? And why does it matter to the person or to the audience that I'm talking? Those are the 2 questions that you need to ask under influence. And if you're able to answer these 2 questions, well and good. Superb. Go ahead. And that's how you will build influencing. So that when you influence, you are able to fast track your journey into the elite circle of either your company or your industry. That's how you will be able to fast track it. So you'll have to influence it. The last point is about sustainability. Again, I found it to be extremely relevant. As I said, I only wish that the book was edited well, because the points are all very, very worth making. And the book is almost not a very popular book, like so many other books that we will talk about, but very, very valid points. So she talks about sustainability. And you will agree with me when I say this, every overnight success is a long-term game. We think they become like this, suddenly they become popular. It is not. It's a long-term game. And if you have to play a long-term game, then recovery is a vital part of that. You should be able to rest, replenish, and then come back. It cannot be always work. You will get burnt out. So if you want to sustain yourself in the game, because it is not going to be a fast track, the opportunity is not going to come in immediately. The doors are not going to be open all the time. So if you have to sustain yourself in your career, you need to play a long-term game. If it has to be a long-term that you have to play, you cannot burn all your energy and all your resources. You should be able to rest, replenish, and recover. So endurance is more about recharging rather than about exerting yourself. So most often we think, oh, you know what, I can do a 12-hour run, whatever. Like, when I say run, working, but it is not about that. Endurance is not that. Endurance is about how can you rest and then come back fresh, rest, come back fresh, rest, come back fresh. So that is what is endurance, and that is needed if you want to play a long-term game. And she says time, effort, energy, these are all resources. If they are resources, time, effort, and energy, if they are resources, all of the resources will have to be replenished. So that means rest, recover, rest, recover. So if you want to play a long-term game, you need to know how to recover and rest. So she says you need to stay healthy and you need to be mentally active, because again, you don't know when the opportunity is going to knock, which means you need to be active. You need to be able to see through the things that are as they are happening. So you need to be mentally active. And I've seen this also. Somebody would have worked really well, but at the time, either they are completely burned out or they are not healthy or any of those reasons, and they miss that particular opportunity and the opportunity goes to somebody else, right? So you need to continue to rest and recover, rest and recover. That's again a good point I thought she's making. And combining to the earlier point that she was making, for endurance, collaboration is the key. Because you will not be able to do everything. You will not be able to sustain yourself for a very long time on your own, which means you need a gang, so to speak. You need a community, so to speak, to collaborate and to move forward. So those are the points that she's talking about. As I said, I found the book to be very, very practical and highly insightful. Just that the first 20, 30 pages were a lot more cynical, but otherwise the book is absolutely fantastic. That's about hacking capitalism, applying cybersecurity skills for your career growth. Thank you, everybody. Do you have any questions? Let me know.